welcome to the Content Bite, a podcast for freelancers who use their words to make money. I'm Rachel Smith, a freelance journalist, copywriter, and content producer. I'm also the founder of Rachel's List, a jobs board and community for Australian writers and other creatives.
And I'm Lynne Testoni. I'm a journalist and a content writer as well. Rachel and I are your weekly co-hosts, and every week we're bringing you all kinds of tips, tricks, and some fabulous guests to help you make the most of your freelance business. This podcast is sponsored by our good friends at Rounded, easy accounting and invoicing software made just for Australian freelancers and sole traders. It's everything you need to make freelancing easier. Find out more at rounded.com.au.
Also, if you're a gold member of Rachel's List, Rounded is giving you 20% off an annual subscription plan. Upgrade to gold membership for all the details. Hi, Lynne. Hello, everybody out there listening. I think this is our second episode for the year, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, it's so great to be back on the podcast. I hope everybody had a really great holiday. And we have another amazing guest today. This week's guest is talking to us about brand voice and the way that you can sort of differentiate yourself in the age of AI, which is quite fascinating, especially right now with ChatGPT on the scene.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting topic, and I'm so thrilled to have Brooke Hill on this week. She's had a really varied and interesting creative career, and it's a really unusual niche. So she's going to share it with us today.
Well, it sounds good. Tell me all about Brooke.
Okay, will do. So Brooke Hill has written content for some of the world's leading brands for more than 20 years. She began writing for the Australian Women's Weekly, Harper's Bazaar, and Cumberland newspapers. We share a lot there, Brooke.
Wow.
I've been there too. She also worked in London as Director Designate for international communications agency Talk PR, crafting stories that were used across the world to gain coverage and convert readers to buyers. Back in Australia, she worked for retail giant David Jones, built brand equity in Pasquale as brand manager, and transformed Sheridan to a lifestyle brand as senior marketing manager. She's now the director and lead writer at The Contented Copywriter, helping brands across a wide variety of industries to achieve their business goals. And I think really interestingly, she's also the author of children's picture book, You Too, You Too.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Welcome, Brooke. We are so glad to have you join us today. I love your blog and I've learned a lot from it over the years. So that's something that I wanted to tell you. I don't know if I've ever told you that, but we've also had contact because you've posted on Rachel's List quite a bit. So we know each other a little bit and I'm a fan. So thank you for coming on.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, both of you. And Rachel, I have to say, every time I post on Rachel's List, post an ad, the quality of the candidates that come through just blows my mind. Like, you know, literally I post once and I just get these amazing, talented writers. So I am so grateful to have you in my life and the board.
I'm really glad to hear that because I don't always hear that from job posts. Like I don't hear back from job posts about how it's gone. So it's nice to hear that for sure.
And we know that a lot of our listeners and obviously members of Rachel's List are interested in writing content and copy. Sometimes they started off as a journalist and they're now doing more content to supplement their income. And it sounds like you made a successful move to content. And do you think those years of working in magazines help you with your career, or you've got lots of PR and comms experience too?
Yeah, look, I think for anyone who's making the move into content, those years that you've had before in whatever discipline it was, so whether it was journalism, you know, working for papers or magazines, I also worked in comms and I also worked in brand strategy. And each of those disciplines, you can draw really incredible skills from that serve a really solid foundation. So journalism, I don't think anybody knows their audience quite like somebody who's, you know, who's a journalist or who works in magazines. And I think that they really know how to find that hook. I think people who work in comms, you know, they understand how to sell through words quite intrinsically. And I think that, you know, obviously if you work in brand strategy, you've got that strategic layer. So whatever it is that you've worked in before, there are so many skills that you can use to articulate, you know, what you can offer when it comes to content.
It's so fascinating because you do have a really wide range of knowledge and experience. I'm really interested to hear about the kind of training that you've done over the years to sort of bring you to where you are now?
Interestingly enough, I think it like 99.9% has actually just been on the job.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yes, I did a media and communications degree. I could not tell you one thing I learnt in it.
So
which
true.
is terrible to say. Could not tell you. I've also done a postgrad in writing and literature, but that was more for pleasure and writing children's books. So everything, when I decided to make the move into content, I literally just swatted off everything that I could learn on the internet. So, I used a lot of Kate Toon's resources. Rachel, I read your weekly newsletters, and I've gleaned a lot of stuff from you. And for me, it was really reading books, reading whatever I could find, and just putting it into practice. I think that's the thing. Like, you just have to go, okay, this is great. I've got information. I'm actually going to try it out, and I'm going to see what works.
Yeah. It's so much of what we do, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sometimes I think also most of us are at the forefront of all of this. Like, content is growing, and that sort of way of communicating is changing a lot. So I guess reading and then practicing it is often the way to go. Almost universities are still catching up, I think, aren't they?
And training has changed so much, hasn't it? It's not this formal education like a lot of us had in the beginning. Now there's so many incredible courses that you can do to upskill. In fact, that's my goal for 2023. I've got about 3 on my list, because I feel like I want to go from where I am now to, at the end of the year, feeling much more confident about different skills. And I think we're going to talk a bit about, the types of skills that writers need to be thinking about in 2023 a bit later.
Yeah. And I know you're also all about brand voice, Brooke. So, and it's a great way of differentiating yourself. So tell us a little bit about that and what you think.
Look, when it comes to brand voice, I mean, I'm sure that people listening and other writers have this, but when clients come to you, that's like their number one concern. Can you write in our brand voice? They might have had like maybe they've had a copywriter who just nailed it, and then they've moved on, and they're like, we don't know how to write in that brand voice anymore. Maybe they've had someone and they haven't quite been nailing it, and they need to figure out how to do it. Or, or maybe they're just really, they know that brand voice really helps a brand set themselves apart from their competitors, and they're like, okay, we need a brand voice, we need brand voice guidelines. But I feel like that is the number one concern that clients have. They always ask, they want to know your experience, they want to know that you've what you've been doing, but they always say, oh, can you write in brand voice? And so what we do a lot of the time is we'll do a test article, paid of course, and we'll say, look, how's this? Have we gotten it? And we nail it, and then we get the job, and then we're flying from there. So that's great. But I just think that brand voice is being able to, when a client comes to you and says, can you write in my brand voice, to have that confidence to go, yeah, I'll give it a crack, and I'll give it a go, and be able to slip into that is so important. And as we're going to talk a little bit about AI in a second, but as we move into this world where, we've got essentially robots who can get the foundations of copywriting done quite easily, we're going to, as writers, need to develop certain skills to set us apart. And I think, to your point, Rachel, with the different training, like university and all that gives you it can give you a really general kind of grounding. But I think as you grow in your career, you really need kind of specialized training. Like, as you go in, you're like, okay, I know I need to develop this skill set, so I'm going to go to this person to learn this from, rather than kind of a catch-all where you kind of end up with that, that kind of roundedness, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and the same skills that perhaps 50 other copywriters have.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's so true. And do you think that it's a rare thing that, I mean, do you come across so many copywriters? I know you've got lots of them from Rachel's list over the years. Is it really interesting to see how many of them can adopt different brand voices? Is that quite a unique skill?
it is a relatively unique skill, but it is something that anybody can learn.
Mhm.
There's a process that you go through. It's like any system or any process. You follow the steps and you can get to where you need to go. So having that confidence, like I love the saying, what is it? That confidence only comes with time and experience. So
Yes.
you just have to follow those processes, and then
Yeah.
you can start to learn to dive into different brand voices. But look, it's definitely not something that, like as I mentioned to you, I'm launching a Master the Art of Brand Voice course,
Oh,
and I
great.
haven't seen any others. There's a couple in America, but I haven't really seen many like this. And considering that's the number one question that clients usually have when they're coming to you, it feels like there's a real need for copywriters to learn it.
Yeah. And if a client does come to you with that question and says, look, I want you to do a paid test to determine whether you can write in my brand voice, what kinds of things should you be asking for from the client in order to, gather that intel and sort of slip into that style?
The things you really need to understand is obviously the audience. So we need to understand who we're talking to, what drives them, what are their, what are their desires, what are their frustrations. We also need to really do our own research to dive into that existing brand. And so if they've got an established brand voice, so like some brands don't have an established brand voice, and then you can build brand guidelines for them, and that's kind of a different thing. But when they've got an established brand voice and they're like, okay, I need you to be able to sink straight into this, you need to become like a secret squirrel and go into all of their comms and pull out like keywords and phrases, and making sure that you're peppering those things through the content that you're creating. So there's research that you need to do on the audience side, and then you need to do the research on and kind of devour all of their content and give yourself some writing challenges to actually be able to put those into place.
Voice of customer comes into that as well, doesn't it? That's something we talk to Susan Rioch about a lot. She's a UX copywriter.
Yep.
Really fantastic. But it's so interesting. That's a whole other podcast.
Totally.
Voice of customer, isn't it?
Wow.
Well, the thing that everybody wants us to talk about, I know, is Chat GPT. We touched on it earlier. It's getting all sorts of coverage at the moment. It's fair to say in Rachel's List circles, there's a lot of freaking out. And I've seen on a lot of other Facebook groups that people are sort of mixed reactions. Some people are trying it out and seeing how it can help them, and other people are just basically freaking out. Yeah, panicking.
I think we've all done that, by the way.
I know. The $1 million question, is it a threat? Is AI a threat to writers?
So I'm going to give an annoying answer, and I think it's yes and no. And look, the first thing I'll do is I do think that I don't love the word threat, because I don't like scaremongering, like I just think that if we prey on that, the bots are going to take over the world and take all our jobs, like that's not useful for anybody.
Yeah.
And so I think we need to kind of jump out of that headspace. So look, there's a few things that I've noticed that it's doing really well. So we've kind of jumped in as a team, and we've, been looking at it and seeing what we can do with these tools, and using both ChatGPT and Jasper and a couple of the other ones. So what they do really well is they give the headline generators are really helpful, and they're really fun, and they're really good springboards. The FAQs, like if you are writing something and you want to know what questions people are asking, yes, you can go into Google, but you kind of have to dip in and out of lots of different blogs to find them. These chat tools just kind of grab everything and tell you all those questions that people are asking, which I think is so helpful so quickly. And every single writer struggles from blank screenitis, from, the terror that comes of looking at a blank screen. And what these tools do really well is they can give a really solid structure and like a basic draft to content that I think is really helpful as a starting point. So if you're like, oh my gosh, I just can't get started today. Like there's nothing wrong with jumping in, plugging it in. And then, but you have to be conscious. And I think this is where it's at the moment. Doesn't mean to say it won't change, but you're going to have to do a lot of work to get it to where it needs to be. So in terms of the depth of knowledge that these tools have, so like ChatGPT, the latest version that was released in November 2022. These tools are only as good as the data that's in them. And that's only got data up until I think the end of 2021. So anything new like that's happened in the last year, it doesn't know about.
Yeah.
And then there's also things that are just factually incorrect at the moment. Again, it relies on the data that it's given. So what a lot of people are finding is that, in fact, there's some systems and software that are starting to reject that kind of content because it's just not correct and they don't trust it enough yet.
Yeah.
So there's the factual piece. There's also, we were talking about brand voice before. It doesn't have brand voice nailed. I was having a good old time trying. I was trying to get it to work and trying to see what it would do. And I was getting it to write in like a fun tone of voice. And the stuff it came up with, it was like how to get the coolness factor into your, and just
it's really naff.
So naff. It just made you cringe. It would just never pass.
Yeah.
It also can't even detect brand voices. So I was punching in, we all love go-to skincare. I was punching in like go-to skincare text, and it was saying that it was boastful and self-important. And I'm like, that is so not what the tone of voice is. That's the opposite of what Zoe Foster Blake's all about. So I think that brand voice is a place that it's not up to speed. And I think ultimately, at the end of the day, it's not human.
It doesn't get the nuances.
It doesn't get the nuances. So it doesn't have lived experience. It doesn't know the heartache of losing a loved one. It doesn't know the sheer joy of, falling in love. There's so many emotions that we have that it does not and can never fully experience. And to that end, where the big opportunities are. And I think that's where we kind of go, okay, so what are the things that it does well that we can harness? What are the things that it doesn't do well? And so therefore, what are the opportunities that we can glean from it? I think that's where stuff like thought leadership really comes into play, because a thought leader has this lived experience, has all this expertise that doesn't necessarily exist out there on the internet. You can't get that from a bot. So that sort of opinion-led, thought leadership-led content, I think will have increased value. And I think that some of the more basic blogs that were kind of tick box exercises for brands anyway, that's where the AI will start to play in a little bit more. That's kind of where I'm seeing it.
I have seen also there's been a few people on some of these Facebook groups that Rach was talking about where they're putting the things through plagiarism checkers and then they don't stand up well. There's presumably because these bots must pick up stuff from the web. So there's a lot of plagiarism. That's a real risk, isn't it? Google must penalize you for that.
Yes, and they are. And so Google's obviously, so from an SEO perspective, obviously Google's going to penalize you for that. And Google are going into a whole code red themselves in response to this, right? To figure out how they can match it and what they can do and how you monitor it. Yeah, I mean, there's a whole conversation that we could get into in terms of, it was such a shift with content when brands became publishers and should they be publishers?
Yeah.
And now it's almost like that there's that whole other, I don't know, ethical question as well. But yeah, we could talk for a whole, we could go down a rabbit hole with that one.
I know it's really, it's amazing, isn't it? I've tried it out just for different things as well. And we'll do some things well. It's like going into Google and trying to find, masses of research about something. It will do that. It will yank it all out and put it in like a little blurb for you. So it's interesting. But like you say, it can't give your copy the emotional layer that is required.
Or the freshness, maybe.
Yeah, or the freshness or that originality. So
yeah. And if everybody's putting in the same inputs, and they're all getting out the same thing, well then, what's original? So that's where brand voice, opinion, thought leadership, perspective, lived experience, that's where all those things become really, really important.
Yeah, and stand head above anything that AI will produce for you. Absolutely. Well, we did touch on how, this is a really critical time for writers to differentiate themselves and to offer those, more strategic services. And we've talked about brand voice being one of them, but are there any other key skills that you think copywriters really need to think about in 2023 and beyond?
Yeah, so I think that it's almost all of a lot of peripheral skills that aren't copywriting, specific. Like I think that when you learn the art of copywriting, you're learning, active voice and all of those sorts of things.
Yeah.
I think copywriters will have to skill up on those things really, really quickly, but
Yep.
then they'll have to look at, okay, what are those other things? So what are those strategic things that we can offer? Is it content strategy, understanding how that bigger picture works? I think research, that's a copywriter skill, but I think being able to really research and, to your point, differentiate between whether something's a well-researched article or whether it's just produced by skimming the internet and pulling out these things. So I think research will be important. I think thought leadership writing, being able to interview somebody and really get inside their heads and distill their information and be able to write on behalf of a thought leader. I think that will be really, really important and powerful. I think there's one of the predictions for this year was around employee voices, like employees being coming into the fore and becoming voices for their businesses more and more. So with that, they're going to need help and support in writing because they won't necessarily have that skill set. So perhaps it's honing those skills in terms of talking to those people and writing on behalf of them. So I think interviewing, extracting that information, and probably as well synthesizing information. There's so much. I don't know if I'm sure everybody experiences the same thing, but some briefs are so complex. It's like, get this wireframe, get these existing web pages, get this new, information that we need to put in, plus, X, Y, and Z. Keywords and everything. There's so much synthesizing that comes into it. It's so complex. And I think the human brain can really only do that at the moment.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a lot for a robot to do.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting what you say about interviewing. I'm actually writing a blog post on my own portfolio at the moment about that and how interviewing is such a unique skill that journalists have and copywriters, but obviously journalists are trained in that and have done it for decades. So and it's really something that you can't replicate at all.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And I find interviewing people, when I do a lot of case studies, that always gives you fresh information.
Yeah.
Adding, even if you've got some background information from what's already out there and you're distilling it, adding a fresh voice or a fresh take on it, that updates it, and that tends to help.
And it just sets that blog post
piece
or that piece of copy above everything else that's just desk research.
Yeah. I guess if the thing that, if we're being realistic, the challenge for writers is about that there's going to be clients out there who might be intrigued by AI, wondering how it might help them cut costs. I mean, I have seen a couple of anecdotes where people have said, why would I employ you when I can just run it through Jasper or ChatGPT? So how do you handle that conversation, do you think?
I mean, I'll tell you what I think now, and then maybe let's talk again in a year and see how that's evolved.
Fair enough.
But my honest answer to that is right now, I will be saying we're exploring it. And currently, I can't see the cost savings to be had because the articles and the content takes so much rework to get it to where it needs to be. That, we all know that editing is 80% of the work and the first draft is like, 10 or 20% max, right? So if editing is 80% of the work, well, then yes, you might save a little bit of time getting it from Jasper, but you're going to have to also spend the time thinking about how you get the most out of that tool. Okay. So the cost savings element, I'm going to be exploring it. And that's what I'm saying to the clients. I have heard of clients that are, they're commissioning thousands of pieces of content. Half of them will be written by humans and half of them are going to be written by blogs. So they actually are exploring it on their own. So I think that what we will be doing is looking at how we can leverage it to create better content. And potentially down the track, there may be like an editing model where, you run it through that and then you edit it. But yeah, still you've got to work on like I said, it still takes time. Time.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a watch this space.
Look, we talked offline a little bit about the kinds of things we're doing with our young kids during the holidays. And I know that you have 2 young kids like me. I've got one. Do you find it hard to sort of balance, work with family and is it easier when you're the boss?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's so much easier. I don't know what. I look at my amazing friends who, head off to work to, work in an office every day. And I feel very grateful that I'm in the position that I am. But yeah, look, I think everybody finds it a juggle, and certainly during holidays, it's working out, okay, how do we get the work done and how do we get the kids occupied and all of those sorts of things, but also still have lovely family time. But the biggest thing and I don't always stick to it, but the biggest thing that I've found is boundaries.
Yep.
So if I was to give one tip, boundaries are like the most important thing when you're freelancing or when you're running a business from home. And that's from the work perspective and also at home perspective. So at work, it's knowing that just because a client asks for something ASAP doesn't mean you have to deliver it ASAP. What clients want is quality work and transparency of when it's going to be delivered, and that when you commit to a deadline, you deliver it on that deadline. But they are okay if they say, can I have it ASAP? And you say, sure, I'll deliver it to you Thursday next week, which is 10 days away. Like they're actually okay. They're actually okay with that. And if they're not, they might say, look, can you get it to me Monday? And then you'll work it out. But you can put those boundaries around, and you don't have to be answering the emails at nighttime, and you don't have to be, you actually only have to answer emails once a day if you want to, if that's your boundary that's in place. But the only person that can set those up is you, and you are the only person that can keep to them. And we're all guilty of letting it all slide and all that sort of stuff for sure, but you have to be vigilant. And it's the same at home. Like, I don't unpack the dishwasher. So my work day starts, don't unpack it, sits there unpacked all day. If my husband comes home, he'll unpack it.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's like, this is my work day. I'd rather earn money and add value to my clients than unpack a dishwasher. So it's just not going to get done.
You just kind of tune out all the domestic stuff as white noise.
Totally. Doesn't get done. And it'll get done. Because if I was leaving to go to an office, it wouldn't get done. So
I applaud you being able to do that, because there's no way I can leave a dishwasher unpacked.
That is the challenge when you are working from home, actually. It's that trying to have space to work when you've got the family around or the house around. Yeah, it is quite tricky.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of people who say their reward at the end of finishing a project or reaching a milestone or something with work is to unpack the dishwasher or put a wash on, which is so sad. But it does help keep the house running.
But it's good because you give yourself a mental break. So I quite like that. But yeah, I guess my point is it's like, you know what, like work is work and home is home, and you have to have boundaries on both of those things. Yeah.
That's so true. And I love what you said about how, we're running our own businesses. So there is nothing wrong with saying to a client, I'll have this to you by next Thursday. Yeah. Instead of being on their deadline and being stressed and panicked and having to fit in with them, you can say, actually, no, this is when I'll have it to you.
Yeah.
And so many clients do fall into line when you do say, that's my capacity. But some of us are so scared to do that. So that's a really good.
I just think you don't ask, you don't get. And they can always push back. Like they're not going to go, oh, I'm not going to work with you again because you can't deliver it in time. They're going to say, look, actually need it by Monday. Like they might have said, I need it tomorrow. And you've said, no, I can do it by next Thursday. And then they might arrive on Monday. But that's still better than what it was. So I just think you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah.
And as long as you nail that deadline, like that's the non-negotiable. Once you've agreed to it, you've got to deliver it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd like to chat a little bit about the agency sort of model, because you now have an agency. And how did that come about? Is it a challenge managing people and the whole thing?
Yeah, look, it happened quite quickly. So when I first started, I basically I was in a fortunate position where I had more work than I could manage on my own. And I met this other wonderful copywriter who was subcontracting. And she was like, yeah, this is what I do and it works really well. And she introduced me to the wonderful Amy, who has been on my team now for like forever since then. And that kind of opened up that world, I guess, to me. And I've been very lucky, you know, in terms of working with such amazing writers, that it's very easy because they're so great, you know. And we are very, in the business, like our priority in terms of like our values, it's all about like work-life balance. Like it's all about the reason why the business is set up the way it is to support us having a good time outside of work, you know, like and I believe that whatever you do outside of work contributes so significantly to how you perform inside of work. So if we can make that a really grown up experience where people work where they want to work, the hours that they want to work, then they'll produce amazing work and they're free to pursue all the other things that they love doing outside of it. So yeah, look, it definitely means that the day-to-day I'm switching between writing and running a business, but I think that's probably satisfies the I don't know, the left and right side of my brains. I never know which is which, but
yes,
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. The doing and the creating, I suppose. Yeah.
And where do you find most of your agency work comes from? Do you spend a lot of time pitching or tendering for jobs, or is it just your SEO working overtime, bringing people to you?
Yeah, so SEO has been doing a great job. I'd say it's about 50-50 word of mouth and SEO. And I have noticed that LinkedIn is starting to be a place as well, which is really interesting. Yeah, so word of mouth is how a lot of it happens, but I do still have to pitch and tender for things. So somebody might say, hey, you know, I know somebody that's worked with you and la la la, and then, but we'll still have to pitch and tender. So there is a lot of time spent on that too.
Do you think agencies need a niche? Like we've often talked about freelancers needing a niche. Do you find that your clients come to you because of your expertise in particular areas or maybe it's about tone of voice, or how does that work?
I think we have definitely built up a reputation for brand voice and being able to nail that, but also how to building up the capability within businesses to write that brand voice themselves. So I definitely think we've built that up. But like I have a love-hate relationship with niching because so like I totally get that, you know, when you niche in a particular field or a skill set, I totally get the value it brings because you can deepen your expertise, you can grow your profile and be known as that expert and all of that sort of thing. But I must say, I think it took me like 7 years to figure out like what my niche was. Because I have always loved getting to know new and different clients and working in different content formats as well. So my favorite bit is when we've got a new client and we're learning their audience, what they do, what makes them tick, you know, how they write, like figuring out how to pull all that together. I love that bit. And I love that you can take from different industries, like you can apply like a beauty mindset, a beauty writing mindset to like real estate, or, you know, you can take engineering and see what you can do when, you know, like with a fashion lens over it. You know what I mean? And I just think you get really unexpected, exciting, creative results. And I think that's what I think clients actually really like that. So I've really resisted and been like, no, I don't have a niche because like I just like it all.
Yes.
I love it all. And
I'm a bit like you. It's like that new shiny thing. Ooh, I'm always chasing or interested or curious about so many different things that it feels wrong to me not to be a generalist in a sense.
Yeah, that's it. And I think that adds value in itself. But yes, but over time, I think we have built a reputation for brand voice. And when I look back, actually, that's what I was doing throughout my whole career, was working in these different, like I've written for 300 different brands and they all have a different tone of voice. You know what I mean? So like it, and Mum was telling me just the other day that when I was 5 years old, I read so much Enid Blyton that I developed an English accent. I mean, how precocious for a start, but also like, you know, I think I think I've always been doing it.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's definitely an argument for both sides.
Yeah, because I
Yeah.
love the niche, but that's partly it sort of came to me bit by bit, and I just find having people come to you because you're known as the expert just gives you the
Yes.
control and the leverage, and I quite like that.
It's so true as well. This is it. There's
both options.
Yeah, there's pluses and minuses to both sides, isn't there?
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, look, as a copywriter and an agency owner, talk us through what an average day looks like for you and the kinds of things you're working on at the moment.
Sure. Well, after getting up, going for a walk, getting the kids off and all of those sorts of things, I will do a few client meetings. I will meet with my team. I will be working on the strategic side of things with the clients. So that might be helping develop voice guidelines, or it might be content strategy. I'll also be working with building up capability within the teams themselves. So it might be training up certain team members or whole teams, and helping them implement like processes and systems so that they can build up their own in-house capability. And then more recently, it's been translating that into like courses that people can take, individuals can take themselves as well. So it's really busy. And then, like a bit of trying to jump on LinkedIn and do the thing.
Yes.
I'm not very good at it. I like it, but I need to do it more. But yeah, so
do.
there's lots of different things, but I think that keeps it really exciting. I've got to get better at time blocking though. I tend to dip in and out of a lot of different things.
Yes, I can relate.
Oh, me too. How far along are you with the course? Have you got a launch date for it?
Yeah, so we've got a Brand Essentials Masterclass, Brand Voice Essentials Masterclass, which is happening on the 2nd of February. And that's a really great, like solid foundation to an introduction to brand voice. And then at the end of February, we're kicking off a Master the Art of Brand Voice course. And I'm so excited about that because it's me once a week with a class where you'll learn each of the different steps and really break down those processes and systems where you can grow that skill and where you can offer it as a service. So you can say to clients, hey, I can develop these brand voice guidelines for you. Or if you're working in-house, where you can actually build those and transform the team and just take it. Because the thing with it, and I could bang on about it forever, but particularly if you're working with an organization, if people struggle with the smallest things, right? So you'll get hung up on, do we use this word or that? Do we, how do we express ourselves? This doesn't sound on tone. And you can end up getting into so many rounds and rounds and rounds of revisions because the team internally, because you don't have those proper guidelines in place and those proper systems in place. But once you have them, like the amount of time and energy and cost that you save once all those guidelines are in place is just like, it's priceless. So this particular course, it will suit people if they want to offer it as a service, freelancers. And then if you're also working in-house and you need to build those guidelines yourself, it'll add such huge value to the business. So yeah, and I haven't seen anything else like it at the moment. So I'm a bit obsessed with it.
Sounds great. It's great. I also wanted to talk about your children's book because that's a whole other thing too. Was that a dream of yours? Yay. Tell us how that came about.
Yes. Well, since I was reading my Enid Blyton books, that's all I wanted to do. And so, yeah, that has been such a huge passion of mine. And when but I actually self-published it in September of 2021. And I self-published it because I knew that my kids were only going to be little for a really short amount of time. And traditional publishing can take years and years and years. And I thought that I wanted to have it in my hands while they were still young enough to fit on my lap and read it. So I thought, look, I'm just going to self-publish it and I'm just going to learn as much as I can and just give it a go and have fun. But then Hachette actually picked it up and offered me a publishing contract. So yeah, so they are going to publish the second edition in March 2020. What year are we now? This year. March 23. So they're going to publish that. So it'll be in all the bookstores then, which is just amazing. Like that's just
so exciting. How did that come about with the contract? Like, did you approach them or did they see it somehow?
there's in the children's book world, and probably lots of different book worlds, there are literary conferences. So there was the CYA Children Young Adult Conference that was happening in, and it was an online conference in July of last year. And I just bought, like, you pay like $90 and you get to have an editor review your work and give you feedback. And so I met Kate Stevens from Hachette through that, and that's how, like, literally that's how it came about, which is amazing. So yeah, if you've got a passion, if you wanted to do that, like those conferences, the access that you get to actual editors, because you can't access them any other way. Like you can send off your work, but it'll never get through. Like it just, it just sits there in the big, well, they read it, but it's harder for them to differentiate. But if you can get in front of them on those conferences, like it's such an amazing opportunity.
Yeah, what a great tip. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of tips, we ask all our guests about their tech tips.
Yes.
Tools of the trade. So what are the programs that you love or that you'd be lost without?
So I would be completely lost without Asana. I'm sure others have used it before, but for me, being able to put the brief in there, drop all the drafts in there, get the client to feedback. Well, they feedback within the Google Sheet or within the Word doc, but to have them, email within there as well and have all the attachments in one place, like it just saves on trawling through the email box. Where was that attachment? When did they send it? I don't know. Like everything's in there, and I would be absolutely lost without it. And then the whole team, when they're working on projects, so we'll be like, we'll give all of the briefing in there, and so they've got all access to all the material and just that transparency of where things are up to as well.
Oh, that sounds good. Yeah. I use Trello, and I think there's a lot of similarities, aren't there?
Similarities. Yeah.
Yeah, I've used Asana as well. And I think that, you can get really smart VAs to set Asana up for you if you're, say, an agency and set up the whole system for you. But we never got that far. We ended up going to Slack, and we put a lot of stuff in Slack. But if I was dealing with lots of client projects, Asana is brilliant. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I think with Slack, the reason why, and it's probably a notifications thing, I've always found like Slack, I get pinged all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, whereas Asana, you still get the notifications, but they only go to email and, like it's not, I didn't find, whereas Slack, when clients ask me to go on there, I'm like, yes, but I don't want to.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be that contactable.
Got to make yourself sleep on there or something. Yeah, it's hard. I only
but they're
just learned
all good. There's so many. There's so many good ones. But I couldn't live without something. Whether it's a Trello or a Monday board or an Asana. Yeah, something.
So tell us where people can find out about you and what you do, and particularly maybe the links to your courses.
Yeah. So if they just head to thecontentedcopywriter.com.au. So if you go to the shop page, the new masterclass will be there, and the course page, the course will be there. And you can also just sign up. So I do a weekly newsletter, which is full of tips. So you can just sign up for that. That's probably the easiest place.
Right.
And LinkedIn as well, now that I'm lurking around there a lot more.
Now you're over it.
How amazing. Oh, it's been so great to hear your thoughts today, Brooke, especially on our ever-changing industry and getting so much advice for freelancers on, how to deal with clients, how to deal with the Chat GPT situation that we're all in. I think it's going to be really useful for a lot of people. So thank you very much for coming on again.
Thank you, Brooke. It's been lovely chatting to you.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's the end of our show this week. So don't forget to share us and promote us on social media. We love that. And maybe that'll make me do, that's my thing for the year, is do more on Instagram with the Content Bite Instagram page. So, and all the show notes will be in your podcast app.
Yes. So head there to find out more about where you can connect with Brooke. We'll also drop some links in on some of the things that we've talked about, so you can go straight there. And thank you again to our sponsors, Rounded, easy accounting and invoicing software made just for Australian freelancers and sole traders. You can find them at rounded.com.au.
Fantastic.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Bye.